There's so much going on in this week's Parsha, which is always what is exciting about the Parshiot in Sefer Bereshit. I want to focus on two different aspects of, I guess, tension that exists. It could be some of you are familiar with certain ways of understanding the tension that between Esav and between Yaakov and the parents, and like what exactly happened there. I want to touch on that. I don't want to analyze that too much, but instead I want to see how the personalities of Esav and Yaakov kind of manifest themselves throughout at their time and also later on in Jewish history. So let's take a look at source number 1. And if you don't have a copy, I apologize. Torah Shabbat Peh. Okay. Vila Toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham Yitzchak. Yitzchak ben Arbim Shana Bekachtot Rivka Bat Petuel Ramimi Padan Aram Achot Lavan Rami Lo Leisha. So the first thing we see about Yitzchak is that he gets married very late. You know, this is the age 40. Forget the Shidduch crisis, right? He's not getting married till the age of 40. His other brother, Yishmael, got married much younger than he did. He's like a late bloomer. You know, guys, sometimes it happens to them, you know, until they hit maturity. Okay, so that was not a social comment. Okay, fine, it was. So let's continue. Kavalov. V'yater Yitzchak l'Hashem l'nochach ishto. Yitzchak, for lack of a better term, we'll use Lashon Chazal, davens to God on behalf of his wife. Ki akrahi v'yater lo Hashem v'atahar Rivka ishto. And Rivka becomes pregnant. V'yitwatetzu habanim b'kirba v'tomer im kem lama ze'anochi v'atelach lidrash et Hashem. And there's some type of tension, and this is what is very important. From the beginning, even in utero, we see there exists this tension between Yaakov and Esav. There's something abnormal, there's something odd, there's something strange. Listen, brothers fight. Those of you that are brothers, you know brothers fight. That's just kind of what they do, right? But the fact that there's a sense of tension that exists in utero is completely abnormal. And what does she do? She needs to seek some type of response. She says there must be something going on. So, here we go. What is the response to her? Vayomer Hashem la. Hashem responds. So again, is this God? Is this a Navi? Is it Shem ve'ever? We know it's a machloket. For all intents and purposes, it doesn't really matter. But what is the response? Shnei goyim v'nech. There are two nations inside of you. And two separate, distinct nations. Usually, a lady has a child, a lady has two children. Like, you don't call them two nations. You're called two children. But no, this nevuah is going to be drastically different. And what is going to happen is two, perhaps diametrically opposing ways of life. Two ways of looking at the world. Two people that will be at each other. And they are going to spread and turn to these nations. However, what's Rav is the
older.
I guess older. Yavod Tzair will serve the younger. Okay. She receives a very interesting piece of information that the older will serve the younger. Now, in the general world, the younger serves the older. I'm not going to ask for hands who's like the oldest in their family and who's the youngest in their family. But in the general world, usually the younger siblings kind of look up and need to respect or pay homage to the older sibling, depending on how powerful that older sibling is. So this nevuah that she receives is going to be the opposite. I'm going to ask a question. When Rivka heard this message, did she tell her husband? So we don't know. And the fact that it doesn't tell us in the Torah doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? I always say from omission, can't really learn too much, except that it wasn't written. So this leads many people to say, because Rivka had this information, that is why, as we'll see in a minute, she's going to, for lack of a better term, favor, love, appreciate, whatever word you want to use, the Tza'ir, and recognize that there's something special as opposed to the elder. That maybe would explain the difference between the way Yitzchak and Rivka were related to their children, Yaakov and Esav. Let's continue. Mazel tov, twins. The first guy comes out red. And we see they're born, there's this tension. You know, like, imagine, like, Yaakov's hand, right? Little tiny hand is already grasping, right? With fingers trying to grasp. What?
It looks cool in the video.
Oh, does it? Okay, fine. Neat. Right? And it's grasping the hand of the child. The baby's baby brother. Right? So you can get that image, right, that you're seeing that's being pictured here by the Torah. Again, it's tension. It's, you know, like when boys, everyone have brothers? Brothers? Yeah, brothers, right? So one brother grabs the other brother and like pulls him down by the ankle. Like, that's already what's happening. This is not like a football game, right? This is like in utero. This is pretty wild. The Torah is telling us there is going to be tension. There's going to be strife. Okay, let's go on. And now they get older, and Esav is Yodei Tzayid Ish Sadeh v'Yaakov Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. So this pasuk, I think, is writing something which is opposing each other. Meaning, if a person is an Ish Tzayid, what is that profession? That is a hunter. Now, what is the profession called Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim? So you're going to say a kola guy, right? But what really is it? Not a kola guy. Despite the way people want to explain this, a kola guy. It's not. Because we know from elsewhere in the Torah that a person who is a Yoshev Ohalim has a profession. I know that's mind-boggling for some people.
It doesn't say anything.
Yeah, it does. Yoshev Ohalim says the pasuk, Yoshev Ohalumi Kineh, is a shepherd. A shepherd is a Yoshev Ohalim. There's tons of proofs in Tanakh. That's what it is. Yeah. It's not my idea. The Rishonim all say that, right? Rosh Yeshiva might not say it, but the Rishonim say it. So, I mean, record it, better be careful. So, Yoshev Tam Yoshev Ohalim is a shepherd. Now, let's go back to a time where there was also tension with the shepherd. And what are their names? And that doesn't end so well, does it? Right? So it's clear the Torah is saying that the tension that existed way back when. Let's go back to Cain and Hevel. What were their professions? What was Cain's profession? Farmer. What was Hevel's profession? Now, that doesn't go so well. Why? Why is there innate tension? Why is there tension between a shepherd and a farmer? The shepherd has sheep, and the sheep eat the crops. That doesn't go well, right? That's like, let's have two professions that are at each other's throats, right? It's like, I don't know. I hate to do this because it's so like stereotypical. Like, I'm like a corporate oil guy, and I'm like a Greenpeace, hippie person. So a Greenpeace hippie, environmentalist, tree hugger, and an oil rich tycoon guy usually don't go along so well together. There's like tension there, right? Okay, that was a bad example. But you have my point. When it comes to Cain and Hevel, we see the innate tension. But there is tension also here as well. What is the tension if you are think about it, a hunter and you are a shepherd? Exactly. That doesn't go over well. So, it's clear that the Chumash is trying to tell us that exists this tension. There exists this tension between the two. By the way, just as an aside, why is it that a shepherd has to live in a tent? This is very important. Why do shepherds live in tents?
On like a higher level than their animals.
I mean, could be, although very good, because you need to travel. So if you're traveling with your flock, you need to have a portable house. Right? That's the idea between why you have a tent, This means tent over my shoulder, or if you can tell that, right?
Tent versus stationary house.
Yes, versus a stationary house. Meaning I can't live in a permanent structure because my flock are located in A, and then they're going to B, I got to be with them. That's my job.
But it kind of seems like at that time people lived in tents.
Right. I know
Avraham,
there's an alternative.
Very good. Avram lives in a tent, and guess what about Avraham? Does Avram stay anywhere for a very long period of time?
No, but that's because he's told to move.
He's not told to move. He's told to move.
He says he lives.
Avram never is told to move. Well, once. After that,
Cheaper than a tent and 4 doors.
what was that?
It was meant to.
No. So here's my question: If everyone lives in tents, why is the Torah telling me he lives in tents? If everyone lives in tents, you follow? So if each time Yoshev Olim, and if everyone lives in a tent, so I tell me lives in a tent. Of course, there's a tent. So there was in those days.
Because he stayed inside.
No, but everything. Like, what else are you supposed to do? Like,
No, because there's alternatives.
what?
No, because there's.
No, it must have been. Look. Tipi. Tipi. Each time Yoshev Tipi.
No, I picture like log cabins.
They had log. Of course, they had log cabins. They had cabins. That seems they were more permanent. Do you have a question? Do you think a king lived in a tent in those days? There is no way.
Kings lived in castles.
Everyone lived in tents. Huh? What do you mean? Yeah, no. They're much more permanent. They weren't metal. There's no metal. There's no. You couldn't live in a 6-story building in those days because they didn't have the right. Yeah, stone. Of course, they had bricks. Migabava was way before. Casaloma. Only in Canada is the castle like 100 years old, like considered like an historic relic. You know what I mean? It's like 100 years old. Whoa, we have a castle. It's not even a real castle. Only in Canada. Everywhere else would be like, okay, whatever. Fine, let's go on. So, now, if it's true, and you'll see why I'm doing this, why I need to set up this tension, because the next pasuk also shows tension. V'yahav Yitzchak et Esav ki tzai b'fiv. Rivka ohevet et Yaakov. Why does Yitzchak love Esav? He brought him food. Ki tzai b'fiv. Now, why does Rivka love Yaakov?
Because she knew that he was the.
So we don't know.
She wanted to make sure he also
Right? Rivka. So here's something very strange. When one part of the pasuk gives you a reason, the other part of the pasuk does not give you a reason. So hopefully you will all love your children because they're your children. So Rivka hevet at Yaakov because Rivka hevet at Yaakov. You don't need a reason to love your children, I hope. Right? I mean, I do sometimes. But generally, you're not supposed to have a reason for it. So last night my son said, "But do you really love me?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Really?" I'm like, "What do you think?" He's like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Think about it. Get back to me." Yeah. He's called 9 years old and wants attention. So I'm like, of course. Anyways. So it could be here also that the relationship that exists with Yitzchak to Esav and to Rivka and to Yaakov, it can't be that Yitzchak is a fool and he sees Esav as this gracious tzaddik, and he sees Yaakov as either like a nebuch or a loser or whatever, right? It can't be. So it's clear that Yitzchak sees something very important in Esav. And what is important? Yes, there's no question that there's something valuable being in Isadeh. Right? There's something very valuable about that. Now, what's interesting about Yaakov, and this is where I kind of tricked you, in that it's true he's an Ish Ohalim, but also something else about him. He's not just an Ish Ohalim, he's also a Tam. So when I have the word Tam modifying Ohalim, now what happens? So, Tam in the Torah means what? Don't tell me what it means by Haggadah Pesach night, because that's not the right translation. Right? That's like the simple sign. That's not a Torah translation. In the Torah, what does the word Tam mean?
Pure or complete?
Complete, pure. Give me an example. Tamim tiyeh Hashem Elokecha. Right? Doesn't mean you should be simple with God. I mean, maybe some people think that. I don't think being with God is quite complex. Right? One example of a Tam in the Torah?
Noach.
Very good. Noach is a Tam. What else? A korban needs to be Tam. What's a korban that's Tam? It has to be complete, right? Can't have like a broken limb at all. It makes the korban puzzle. So we see here that Yaakov, to some extent, is like mushlam. He's complete. He's... And I think that may... Now, how does that modify the Yoshev Holim? So that is what leads certain people to say, no. Ish Tam, Yoshev Holim means he's not your regular shepherd. Maybe he's more like your kolo guy. Right? But that's where they get it from. It's the Ish Tam.
Why can't you be pure?
So what exactly? One could be that he's actually an honest shepherd. Or he's wholehearted, meaning, I look at it, is Esav is a conniving hunter, and Yaakov is a proper, appropriate farmer, shepherd. Sorry, right? That's how I look at it. Fine. Let's move on. So again, there's this tension. Rivka loves Yaakov simply because of who he is and what he is. Vizid Yaakov Nazid, v'yavo Esav minas tevoyev. Okay, so Yaakov is preparing as some stew. Esav comes back and he is tired. That's going to be very important. Hu ayev. Vayomer Esav al Yaakov haliteni na min adom hazeh ki ayev anochi. Esav turns to Yaakov and says, "This is a short vort. It's my favorite short vort ever in the history of the Torah. So I'm going to give it right now." Esav says, "Please give me red, because I'm tired." And that's what they called him. Akin karashmo Edom. Huh? I'll repeat. I'm just translating. Give me some red. I'm tired. That's why they called him red. Now, why is that strange? That's not your question?
Why would that?
What was he asking for? Soup. We know it's soup. It's the next pasuk. Look at the next pasuk. Fine, not next pasuk. 2 pasukim later. Fine. 3 pasukim later. Fine. 4 pasukim later. It says, "V'Yakov natan le'Esav lechem ve'nazid atashim." What are nazir atashim? Instead of lentil soup. So how come Esav, instead of saying to his brother, "Give me soup," instead it says, "Give me red." That's why they called him red. Instead, it should have said, "Can you please give me some," or "Give me." By the way, halitini na doesn't mean please. This kills me. We're all taught when we were in Hebrew day school that na means please. That's not true. That's maybe modern Hebrew. It is not true. It's one of these like mistaken translations that we were taught when we were in Jewish day school. Na doesn't mean please, because halitini na, you picture Esav saying, "Can I please have?" He's not saying please. What does na really mean? Now. Very good. How do you guys know that? I'm impressed.
Seem like that.
Okay, good. Na means now. That's why muvusha korban pesach. Na muvusha, because it's raw. You don't have time to cook it. You want it now. Thank you. It's good to have Rivka here. What? It's flashing them? Is the battery's running out? Or that means it's full?
The battery's running out.
No, it's not.
I have another battery in my bag.
It's running out.
I mean, yeah, but you're still
How
okay.
much longer you have?
No, that means it's gone in like 3 seconds.
Because it's been doing that for like 5 minutes already. Well, there you go.
I have another battery in my bag. Okay. We'll figure it out. Maybe it'll be a miracle. It'll last longer. It'll last for 8 days. Okay, bad joke. Alright, so the red. Oh, here we go. So why is it red? Will you give me red? So here's what I think Esav is really saying. Esav is saying the following. Does the color of this book tell me anything about this book? No. Color is the most superficial way of describing something. Right? Esav, when the Torah says, "Halitini na min adom adom hazeh," when Esav sees soup and food, what does he see? The most superficial way to describe something. Color. So that's why he says, "Halitini na min adom adom hazeh," because the Torah is saying Esav is superficial. When he sees something, he doesn't see the depth and essence of anything. He sees its color, which is the most superficial way. If I tell you I have a red book, it means nothing about the content of the book. Right? Isn't that neat? So therefore, Al King Karashmo Edom, because what the Torah is saying that Esav wasn't a person of substance. Now, why specifically red and not purple and not orange is because Chazal said that what is Esav is about red, which is about anger, which is about blood, which is a hunter. That's what all connects. Right? Isn't that neat? So that's a great way to understand the pasuk now. Otherwise, the pasuk makes no sense, but that's what the Torah is actually trying to tell us. Esav sees something, he doesn't see the content, he doesn't see soup. He sees its color, superficiality. Let's go on.
How can someone be superficial in those days? I feel like it's hard to.
Because they didn't have like iPhones?
No, I don't know, like it's easier nowadays.
I always say it. You know what it's like saying? It's like going back 100 years and the grandparents saying, in every generation, I always say, people complain about the same thing about their kids. They're not playing outside enough. They're distracted by technology. So now they watch TV and play with their iPhones. 100 years ago they did other things, right? Whatever, again, it's all relative, but I always feel that, you always see that, like with grandparents. Like, you used to be on your phone too much. Well, on your cell phone. Okay, but it's like complained about when there was like a landline. And there wasn't a landline there, probably on the radio too much. and they're on like their little transistor thingies, and then before that they were on their, I don't know, pebbles. I don't know, whatever. I probably skipped a few technological advancement things, but you understand what I'm saying, right? So, okay, let's go on because we haven't even started. Okay, here we go. Here's what happens. So let's continue in the Chumash. Sell me your birthright. I'm about to die. Bechorah is something which I'm not interested in right now. Again, I don't want to deal with this topic. It's an important one, but I need to move on. And he sells it. We see the verbs, right? Okay, v'yivez, and he scoffs at the Bechorah, and that is where it ends from here. Fine. What I want to show you is that Chazal see this interaction with Esav and with Yaakov is something that's actually a battle between the hands and between the mouth, between words and between actions. And if you take a look throughout Divrei Chazal, and actually we'll see it by the end, Chumash as well, there's going to be this tension between listening, between hearing, between conversing, and between one's hands and doing. Let me give you an example. We all know this, when you're younger. Esav, ki tzayid befiv. What does Chazal say about Esav? What do you mean that Said is befiv? What do you mean that hunting is in his mouth? Most people don't hunt with their mouth. What do you do with you eat with your mouth, or you hunt with your hands? Right? That's conductor. But you understand my point, right? One hand. But what's Esav saying Said befiv? What does Chazal say? If you don't know, it's source number 2. Keep Said befiv. What does Chazal say about Said befiv?
He was like
Deceitful. He would hunt with his mouth. You were deceitful with your mouth. He'd lie to his father. When Esav eats the food that Yaakov gives him, you know what word is used? The word that the Torah uses to describe how he drinks is it a word? Hang on. Halitenina. Yeah. Hang on. Where's that Rashi? Why isn't it here? Ivus. Where's that Rashi? Why isn't it included here? Anyways. Halitenina. What does the word halitenina mean? So halitenina is the same verb. I thought I had Rashi here. I apologize. I didn't include Rashi in the pasuk. Rashi says the word halitenina, right? Again, go back to the word na, not meaning please. It means now. Halitenina literally means I want to devour it. Rashi, I forget what Rashi quotes. He quotes, I think it's the same verb that's used when an animal eats. Ivus ba'alav, there's some pasuk thing from Yeshaya, I remember somewhere in Tanakh, that says this is the verb that's used the way an animal eats. So again, Esav is like devouring the food. Right? Again, it's this very animalistic, he's using your mouth, supposed to do it for eating, he's not doing it for eating, he's using it for like the wrong things. Right? The next, if you take a look at source 3, source 3 is a Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, something that happens much later on in Chumash. Shalach l'chush mazolov l'red l'mitzrayim v'alot k'tav olah lahem beinam l'kach halach naftli shehu ayala shlucha. When they're about to bury Yaakov Avinu, comes along Esav, and Esav says, "Stop! You're not allowed to bury Yaakov here." So Yosef says, we want to show you that we have a deed on this property. So he sends his son Naphtali, this is Mishnah and Chumash, to say, Naphtali, do me a favor, go bring the deed that we own Rat HaMachpelah. Chushim ben Dan, I've heard this midrash before, Haya pagum ba'ozno b'lashono. He was a deaf mute. Amar lev b'nei ma nachnu yoshvim kan. He says, I was able to talk, so he did sign language, I guess. He said, what are we waiting here for? Haro betzba'o, amar lo b'shvil ha'ish hazeh, shino meniach oton likbor et Yaakov. So they say to him, the reason why we're delayed, why we can't bury your grandfather, why we can't bury Yaakov, is because of that guy over there, Esav. What does he do? Shalaf et charbo ve'tiz et rosho shal Esav. Comes on, Chubi Mendan, pulls out a sword, and beheads Esav. Nichnas rosho l'toch ma'at machpelah. Esav's head rolls into Marat Machpelah. What is going on here? Why did Chazal say that Esav's head is in Marat Machpelah, but not the rest of his body? I think there's a very deep message. Esav is a person whose head and arms are actually disconnected. You say something and you do something else, right? That's exactly how Chazal see Esav. As a person who makes promises, that's Titzayid Befiv, right? He does actions that he's totally, he doesn't even use his mouth properly, that's what goes in the food, but even when in terms of how he behaves with his actions, right? How he scoffs at it and the way he hunts, it's totally disconnected between his behavior and his thought process and his actions and the way he interacts in the world. That's how Chazal clearly saw this type of Esav personality.
So wouldn't his body be able to go over something?
So no, because there, meaning his actions, how he engaged in the world physically was something that Chazal did not see fit, shall we say, to be placed about the Machpelah.
From his mouth he was lying.
So what about, what does Chazal say about when he spoke to his father? He still had kibud av. I mean, interesting. Even though he was maybe deceitful, we see, and the Torah actually says it, he refused to kill or attack his brother while his father was still alive. Right? Interesting. So we see here that he was, shall we say, was a little bit reluctant to use his hands to kill his brother when his father was alive. Again, there's this disconnection between the head and the hand. It's almost like he's severed, between the two. There isn't this. Most people would say, like, I would never kill my brother ever. That's the normal way of responding, right? It's almost as if things that he says, because he said, "V'mot avi, I'll get him," whatever the words are, right? He says it's almost as if he has sometimes maybe the words that he says might be right, but sometimes his actions are wrong. It's almost like there's disconnection between, almost there's severed between the two. I think that's how Chazal understood this type of Esav personality. I'll give you another example. Here. And the famous one, source number 4. V'yomer Yitzchak el beno, ma ze miharta limso b'ni, v'yomer ki yikra Hashem Elokecha lefanai. V'yomer Yitzchak el Yaakov, source 4. Kshan elai v'mushcha b'ni, hata ze b'ni Esav imlo. V'yigash Yaakov el Yitzchak aviv yimeshu, v'yomer, hakol kol Yaakov, v'yadayim yidei Esav. We see here that, again, there's almost this disconnection. You speak like you're Yaakov. Well, he was Yaakov, right? But your Yadayim are the hands of Esav. Again, there's this notion of how Esav interacts with the world is very definitive. It's almost the sense of evil and cruel, but the mouth, the way Yaakov perhaps is able to speak, is a way of speech of that is proper. There's this connection between the two, and it appears that with Esav, it was almost as if it was severed. Okay, I'll show you one other idea. Even in here, in source 7, take a look at the Gemara in Gittin. Hakol kol Yaakov v'yadayim yidei Esav. V'yadayim yidei Esav, zo malchut harsha'a. She'echrivat beitenu v'serfat echalenu v'gleitanu me'artzenu. Right, the hands of Esav are what, shall we say, destroyed and exiled us. Hakol kol Yaakov, ein lacha tefillah shemu'elet she'ein ba mizar'o shel Yaakov. Again, it's this notion that tefillah and the voice come from Yaakov. It's the hands, the actions that come from Esav. When Esav did things, his actions were done without intent. They were done with their actions that were done that were evil, that didn't have this sense of almost purpose. Interesting. The first time that we see Yaakov's hands, what are Yaakov's hands doing? holding on to Esav. The bridge, they want to pull him back. No, you don't go first. Why? I think perhaps they see this as a sense of symbolism, where Yaakov says, no, my hands are grasping at, I want to grasp out into the world first. I want to have my hand go out into the world and interact with the world and be with the world and try and be able to connect. I want to be out in the world because we interact with our hands. As Rabbi, wash your hands, let's say, before we eat bread, right? Why? Because our hands is how we engage in the physical world. And Yaakov, I think, views the physical world and says, I want to make this world, this physical world, not severed from thought and intent and purpose, but I want to be able to unite this message of the world where a person's thought and intent and purpose and prayer and speech and one's actions are actually, shall we say, working in tandem and working properly. And maybe that's why the bracha that Yaakov receives from Yitzchak thinks that he is Esav. It's a physical bracha. I don't know if we have time to go into it now because it's getting a little bit late. But the bracha that Yitzchak gives to Esav really is about the physical world. It's a physical bracha. It's not a spiritual bracha. What I think Yitzchak sees maybe in his children is that there are two aspects of what will continue Yitzchak's life. There's almost for lack of a term, there's like the minister of education and the minister of like foreign affairs. You know, like Yaakov is this tamim type of person who'll be very good at doing, education and be very good at doing that sphere. And Esav, what Esav be very good at? Esav tzayid, Esav is a warrior. We need a guy like that too. Not that Esav, in Yitzchak's eyes, was going to be a Grosh Tzaddik, was going to inherit the land of Israel, was going to continue the Avram Yitzchak and Esav. Yitzchak clearly saw that. What I think Yitzchak sees, if in the previous generation there was a split between who was going to continue and who was going to inherit and who was going to be part of this great family, it kind of makes sense if you're having twins. God is trying to tell you they both will. They both will be the next Yitzchak. They both will continue in the ways of Avraham. And that's how Yitzchak sees it. Yitzchak sees, okay, at some point in time, I won't have to decide on children. I had to decide on children by Yitzchak and by Yishmael. But maybe when it comes to Yaakov and Esav, after all, it's the same mother. Twins! So maybe Yitzchak sees in his children two different ways of the world, two different ways to interact, and we need both of those ways. We need a sense of action and warrior, and we need a sense of being out there. We also need a sense of a person who's tamim and mushlam, who's able to connect his actions and thought and speech, and they have value. But what ends up happening is, no. That's where Yitzchak's mistake is. The message of the Rav Yavod Seir maybe is trying to tell us, no, only one will continue in the ways of Avraham and Yitzchak. And who will that one be? That's going to be Yaakov. The next generation, all 12 will be part of that lineage. And that's where I think, in the end, why Esav gets severed. Esav gets severed because there's a sense of that rejection. There's a sense of not all of Esav is pure. He doesn't have the behavior that is needed, and the way he views the world cannot continue the families of Avraham and Yitzchak. And that's why he, shall we say, gets literally cut out from the picture. Oh, there it is. There's what Rashi was looking for in source 10 that explains how an animal eats like Esav. And just to go to the end, the last couple of sources 13 and source 14, by Amalek and by Har Sinai. We know that when you fight Amalek, first of all, Bnei Yisrael were Ayef, remember? Va'ata, Ayef v'yageya. That's not here, that's later on the Chumash. Who else was Ayef? That's Esav. Esav's progeny we know is Amalek. We know that too. So how is it that Esav is defeated? What does Moshe need to do to destroy Amalek? Moshe's hands were very heavy, and his hands were lifted up in the air. Famous Mishnah on Rosh Hashanah. When Moshe's hands were lifted in the air, and the Jewish people looked upwards, Bnei Yisrael were victorious. Why? Because that's uniting tefillah with actions and with hands. So when a person is hand and thoughts and mind and intent are united, that is how we are victorious over Parshat B'Shalach, over Amalek, because they wanted to sever the hand, the mind, the body, the intent, and one's action. And what do we do right after? What is the next, this according to most Rishonim, what is the next major narrative after the battle of Amalek, Vayavo Amalek? The next is, forget Yitro, because according to some people that happened before, right? But is Har Sinai. Why? Because at Har Sinai we listen to Kol Hashem. At Har Sinai, it's all about listening to the voice of Hashem. It's about listening. It's about, and there, by Nasav and Ishma, what's Nasav and Ishma? It's a purpose of following the mitzvah. The purpose of following the mitzvah is not we're just going to listen, do, we're also going to act. So the purpose of Matan Torah is for us to affect our mind and our actions and our thoughts and our intentions and hopefully bring it to some type of purpose and our mission, not to be like, I'll say one thing and do another, say one thing, but try and make everything that we do, think, feel, shall we say, with intent and purpose. There's lots of other parallels between, by the way, this can connect us to Gan Eden. We failed to listen to Kol Hashem in Gan Eden. We didn't go after, to some extent, the failure of Gan Eden is also about severing a person's intent and purpose, but maybe that's for another time. As I always say, there's only like really 3 or 4 themes in Av Chumash, and they're kind of all interwoven throughout everything, but that perhaps for another time. Notice how the battery actually made it. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. So there we go. See, it's a Chanukah miracle. All right, thank you everybody. Next week we are on... I want to just dedicate this year to someone who's having surgery. His schedule is surgery at 12:30. His name is Yehuda Mordechai Ben Beila Liba. Should have a refuah shlema. And anyone else of the Chole Yisrael who need a refuah to go along with him as well.